guys, welcome back to our channel. In this video, we will be talking about the neuroscience major. My name is Devanay, or just Dove, which is a lot easier to say. I'm the Director of Curriculum and Program Development here at STEM Scholars. If you guys have any questions following this video, feel free to reach out to me or reach out to any one of us really with any question that you may have, and we'll definitely get back to you on that. And also let us know what kind of videos you want to see, because we'll be more than happy to make those videos. All right, so let's just get right into it. So what are we going to discuss in this video? We're going to talk about what is neuroscience, why would you want to choose neuroscience as a major, the general college requirements and major requirements. I'm just going to briefly go over this, because every school that does have a neuroscience major has different requirements for that major. I went to Queens College, so what was required of me might not, be required of you at a different university. But I know that at my university, there was a heavy scientific research component. So in order to graduate, we had to do a lot of research. We had to do a thesis. And I believe that many schools also have a research component to the major. So that's something that you also would like to think about. And we're also going to briefly talk about the NIH and the NSF. This is something, well, these are organizations that you should know if you're interested in any STEM major at all. And the sooner you know about them, in my opinion, the better your life will be. I'm also going to touch on what you can do with the degree itself. And just going to give some general advice on how to conquer college. I think that I've had a very unique college experience, but it's been a really good one, So, I'm excited to just share my 2 cents, and hopefully you guys find it useful as well. So what is neuroscience? It's the study of the nervous system, and what's really cool about this major, not just the major, but the study of neuroscience in general, is that it combines all the different branches of science. So there's a little chemistry, there's a little biology, there's a little physics, a little psychology, there's a little bit of everything that comes together and forms neuroscience. And it's also becoming a very popular study because our scientific understanding of how the nervous system works is increasing so much, especially in the past 10 years, I want to say 15 years, the development of optogenetics. There's a lot of things that we can do now that we weren't able to do back then. So more and more people are adding a neuroscience component to their research for a couple of reasons, but I guess we'll touch on that in a couple slides. And it's just good to know how the body works. In my experience, I've seen that many people often major in psychology because they're interested in understanding how the mind works. And I always like to say that neuroscience and psychology are very similar in that way, that you're getting to know your body. You're getting to know why you do the things you do, but on a more biological level, if that makes sense. So the neuroscience major at Queens College, you actually have to apply for this major because there's a research component. In general, most schools will require you to have 120 credits in order to graduate. Some schools, they require a little more for STEM majors, but the general consensus is 120 credits. Of those credits, for Queens College in specific, 55 of those should be from courses to fulfill your major requirements. And credits does not mean classes. So when I say 55 credits, I don't mean you need to take 55 classes in neuroscience. That turns out to be, um, I guess, I don't want to do math right now, but it's not a crazy amount of classes. And if you plan it out, then it's very manageable. I think the most important thing, I mean, which I'll talk about in my last slide, is planning out your college experience, because colleges don't mind if you're there for 50, 60 semesters. It's up to you to really say, here's my goal. I'm going in with this goal. It doesn't need to necessarily be a specific major, but you kind of have a sense of what you like, right? And you have to give yourself time to get everything done in a reasonable fashion. Um, my school required us to spend a year in a research lab doing research, working on a thesis. I actually spent two, 2 to 2.5 years in my research lab working on um, my thesis. And don't feel that you have to go in with this question of like, this is how I want to cure cancer. No, that's not how it works. And I feel like once you enter the scientific community on your campus, you'll, get an idea of how things work, you know. But again, we'll talk about that a little later. One thing you will see is that some schools offer a BA versus a BS. It doesn't really matter. So when you get your degree, you're not getting a bachelor's of neuroscience. You're either going to have a bachelor's of arts, a bachelor's of science, or another form of a bachelor's, but your major, your concentration is in neuroscience, but that doesn't really matter. um, so when it comes to research, you want to go to as many research days that your school offers. These are events where they would host little poster sessions where, you can go and get an idea of what the different labs on the campus are doing. Sorry. And you can also go online, look up professors, look up what they're doing. You can also look up just the research ecosystem on your campus and see what's going on there. Um, and then if you're genuinely interested in what a lab is studying, you don't have to know the ins and outs of that lab. You can always just email the PI or the professor and, say, I would love to learn from this lab, but is there any way that I could be a part of this? And if this is something you're interested in, I'm sure any one of us here at STEM Scholars could make a video on how to find a research lab that best fits you, because we've all worked in research labs despite our various degrees. So some of us majored in English, chemistry, neuroscience, psychology. It doesn't matter. We've all worked in the lab. So we can all, shed some insight on that. The biggest thing for me when it came to working in a lab was thinking critically. So I came from a underserved high school. I've always went to underserved schools. There was no emphasis on, I don't want to say it like that, but there was no real emphasis on critical thinking. It was more so, here are instructions and I need you to follow them. And if you want to graduate or if you want to go to the next grade, you follow these instructions, you'll be fine. I don't have to see you again. You don't have to see me again. So what happens when that is the case is that, you don't really develop that kind of investigative muscle, which is very important to the success of your research. So again, we could make a video on that. I don't want to spend too long here. But you want to also understand your research techniques and why you're using them. And in order to successfully do this, you have to get used to reading many journal articles. I cannot stress this enough. If you don't like reading, like me, high school, I'm not reading anything. But that quickly had to change in college where, I wanted to be in the lab. I knew I had to work for it. You're just going to have to get used to reading journal articles and not being discouraged by the dense language. But again, that's another video. The NIH versus the NSF. These are two organizations that I am encouraging you all to look into. They are so important for any scientific research. And here's another thing. If you are an undergrad and you have any funding from any of these organizations, that looks amazing. That looks amazing anywhere that you apply. So right now, I am a research technician. I'm taking a gap year, like I mentioned before. I do plan on going to medical school, but right now I'm working in a lab at a research powerhouse. And something that people always comment on when I go to interviews is the fact that I was an undergraduate student who had support from both of these organizations. So it's definitely something that you want to look into. When you get into that lab and you find what you like, just look into both of these. So NIH focuses more so on the health aspect of science. So they're interested in research that relates to nature and behavior of living systems, so that this research can later be applied to improving patient quality of life. Whereas NSF is more general. They fund basic science. They're interested in technology, tools, engineering, et cetera, and they just want to improve general scientific knowledge. And both organizations are very important. And yes, it's something that you definitely want to keep on your radar. So what can you do with your degree? So like I mentioned, I am a research technician. You can also be a lab manager, a research assistant. There's not a huge amount of difference between these roles. The pay is different though, but more or less it requires the same skill set, which is acquired through, the research. If you're interested in medical school, dental school, optometry school, veterinarian school, whatever the case may be, graduate school, this is a very useful degree to have. But I need to stress something, and I can't stress this enough. I can speak for medical school because I'm pre-med, and I was the president of the Minority Association of Pre-Med Students in my undergraduate college. So I interacted a lot with medical schools, and it does not really matter what you major in. Okay, you can still apply and get into medical school. You can major in walking if you want to, but they just want to know that you have a thorough background in scientific courses. However, I feel like the neuroscience major, it really develops, that investigative muscle that will be very helpful for you in medical school. You can also be a teaching assistant, an instructor, a teacher, a scientific specialist, consultant, again, a research coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. You can even do something outside of the field of science, but having a neuroscience degree, it definitely helps when looking for a job. It's a good major to have majored in. Does that make sense? I don't know. All right, general college advice. You can reinvent yourself. It doesn't matter who you were in high school. It doesn't matter who you were in middle, elementary school, whatever the case may be. It does not matter. You can become a completely different person once you enter college. For me, like I previously mentioned, I went to underserved at-risk schools my entire life. There was no one to really push you and say, you can be whatever you want to be. Like, I didn't have any of those privileges, but I knew that when I entered college, my goal was to go hard and get out. And, at the beginning of college, there wasn't really people that looked like me in my classes. So I really had to like teach myself a lot of things that I feel that, my classmates had a more solid background in high school, whereas I'm coming from a high school that didn't really provide much. So I had a lot of catch up to do. It was just an interesting task, but I did it and I did it well. It doesn't matter if you were a C student, a B student, you can make your way to that 4.0 every semester. It doesn't matter. I think there's a misconception about college that the classes are harder in college than in high school, and that's not necessarily the case. It's just, it can be a lot of work at times. So that's why it's important to be organized and be on top of everything. You don't have to be a genius to have a 4.0. It doesn't matter what major you have. It doesn't matter what you're majoring in. It's just about, how you approach life in your courses while you're, working. Again, we could make a video on that if you guys are interested. But yeah, you can reinvent yourself into that 4.0 student. It's okay, it can be done. And even if you miss that 4.0, a 3.9 is just as much gold. 3.4, whatever, just whatever your best is, whatever you're aiming for, you can get that. Yeah, and that ties into understanding that no one is necessarily smarter than you. College can be really intimidating. At times, you can feel like everybody else seems to know what's going on in the class, and you're kind of the only one falling behind. That's not the case. If you're struggling, chances are other people are struggling too. And if someone in the class is getting straight A's on every exam, there's no reason why you can't be that person as well. But yes, this all ties into being organized and being ahead of everything. This is a very important point. Be smart about your college of choice. I know that in high school, everyone wants to go to the biggest and the best universities, and there's nothing wrong with that. But my personal belief is that go where you have a financial plan that works for you. If you know that you don't want to graduate with $50,000 in debt or hundreds of $1,000s in debt, then there's nothing wrong with going to a state school. I went to a state school. I graduated debt free, and out of college, I started working in the Ivy Leagues. It doesn't put you at a disadvantage, but again, it's all up to what you want, and it's up to what you can afford. So definitely think about that, because for right now, you're in high school and you see the tuition and it just looks like numbers that you can tackle. If you aren't getting a scholarship or financial aid, definitely think about, whether that's something that you want. And if it is something that you want, then go for it, full force. And my last advice is take your time, figure it out. The possibilities are endless. You don't have to go in knowing what major you want to major in. You definitely want to have a plan though. So maybe start off with general courses. Then you can narrow a couple of majors down and what classes do these majors maybe have in common. Before even declaring your exact major, you can just see, this overlaps, so I can't go wrong taking this now. You know what I mean? So take your time, figure it out. Don't feel pressured. I mean, that's easy to say now that I've made it over, but the possibilities are endless. Just be your best, do your best, and take care of yourself while you're doing it. Self-care, if you guys want a video on that too, let us know. All right, thanks so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. Give this a like, a comment, subscribe to us, share this with your friends. If you didn't like it, also give it a thumbs up. Just let us know what you want to see, and we will provide. All right, bye guys.